You know, the daft collars that we have to wear for court, on the back, and hook it on there, and then on there, and then I'll probably forget how to tie it because I'm thinking about it. Could never see properly. My parents realised when I was about 6 months old that I was sort of squinting, so they took me to various doctors who discovered that I couldn't see very much at all. We went through the whole circus of having stronger and stronger glasses till you were almost looking through spheres, they were so thick. By the age of 7, it was established that it was a losing battle.
Because Dad can't see, Dad doesn't cook. He tells me he used to cook when he was in university, but I have yet to see him cook, and I've been alive 20 years. He cooked me toast for like the first time, he burned it for me, and that's like my first memory. I was like, I'll let him off, like this was.
Having seen was great because I knew what colours were. I knew, for example, the size of a football field, what a double-decker bus is in terms of its sort of size and shape. I'd seen a sky with clouds. Over the years, I may well have forgotten some of those images or may have contorted one thing to another. But in a way, it doesn't kind of matter because for my own purposes, I know what's blue and what's red. I could never really see well enough to hold the memory of a face, but lots of those other things, you know, chairs, tables, carpets, whatever, they all kind of live on.
Oh, he used the BB, got told up 2 shots period of time in custody. Yeah, he's got a robbery on his record.
I am a solicitor. I work in Nottingham. I'm one of the partners in the biggest criminal defence firm in the country.
Your belated birthday present.
Oh my word, thank you. If everything wasn't packaged in such a way that you needed a chainsaw to get into it, I might be able to explore those, but... Oh, hang on. Oh, yes. Neat. Yes. Let's face it, we all take our headphones round in little wallets. When I was about 7 or 8, I was at a blind school, and I remember one of the kids saying to one of the teachers, oh, well, when I grow up, I'm going to be a train driver. And the teacher said, well, you're not, are you? And the kid said, yeah, I am. And she said, well, you wouldn't really be able to see enough to drive a train, would you? At that point, I started to think, crikey, I've not really thought very much about what I want to do when I grow up, but I can suddenly see there's a lot of things I couldn't do. I got to hear that there were some blind lawyers, and at that time there was a radio programme called Brothers in Law, and it was a comedy show. I used to listen to it every week, and I decided, yeah, well, if blind people could do law, the kind of life these guys had sounded like the kind of life I fancied. And the cases that were always the most interesting ones were the criminal ones. Where the fuck's Andy? Where the fuck are you? You're always on fucking holiday. Give us a ring, mate. I didn't realise you were away. Not having to look me in the eye, I think, is very useful to a lot of clients. The way somebody looks or the way they move their facial features or their eyes can be a very good indicator as to how shifty they are. People know that. And so suddenly, the fact that they don't have to make eye contact can give people a bit of a break. And that's often quite useful because you need people to relax in what's always going to be a stressful situation around the courts.
He says, you're not getting me, so bugger off. We then demand his wallet and phone. We then grab his stick, and there's a bit of a struggle, and we do get his stick right round our head.
We punch him, but not until we punched him twice to the left side of his head, then the right side of his head, then his jaw.
Yeah. Not much of a robbery, is it, he might?
No, he's charged assault with intent to commit robbery.
Is it? In terms of people's voices, there are various indicators of whether somebody's lying.
No disrespect to fellow colleagues, but I need you to be there for me as you know the history of my case, and I trust in your professional judgment. She is homeless on Class A drugs. And
One
does not
is
care about
when they
herself
repeat the
or
question
anybody
you've just asked them. So, mate, where were you on Friday night? And they will say, where was I on Friday night? What I think is important is to genuinely listen to the sense of what people are saying. So you have a scenario, you have a set of facts, and if their answers don't stack up, you have to judge it carefully, but a moment comes where you have to go, oh, fuck off. And at that point, if you do it with a bit of a smile, people will often, go, okay, well, let's have another look at this. I just walk into a room, I meet somebody, we sit down and we talk about, the fact that they've taken a knife or a bottle or a firearm to somebody. It's never really about that. And even when people are aggressive or detoxing or have some psychiatric issues, it's very rare I've felt any fear.
I've never seen him be scared, yet he's been in scary situations. I've seen clients with him either in reception or in the courtyard outside our office, and they are right in Digby's face and screaming at him. And he just stands his ground and screams back.
There's a story Mum always tells when her and my dad first got together and she first went down to the Crown Court or the Magistrates Court, and Dad was just like having a post-court interview with this guy who had like tattoos all over his face, like massive piercings, looked really scary, and apparently Dad had told him to sit there and stay quiet and not say anything cheeky to the judge, and apparently he'd done the exact opposite. And Mum always says Dad was just sitting there shouting at this guy who obviously looked so threatening, and Mum was like, maybe I wouldn't have said that, but he can't see him, so.
The time that I felt fear was when I met a guy who was very dangerous, quite casual about the use of extreme violence, and had a lot to protect because he had a big drugs empire. A light dark's very useful. I can tell if a light's on or off, I can tell if a light's strong or weak. Maybe it's coming through a window, which helps you orientate within a room. If I'm in a house by myself, I would always put the lights on. I used to think, well, that's so that if somebody comes round and they knock on the door, they don't think it's freaky that the place is in darkness and somebody then suddenly emerges from the gloom. It's more than that. Light is quite comforting. It's got a certain warmth to it. I put the lights on actually because I want them on, because I'd rather they were on than not. We do like to be in the light, we like to be in the sun, we like to be somewhere that's bright and cheerful. Those things are as true for me as for a great many other people.
Also,
meeting clients, in an uncontrolled environment. It's interesting. Because you can't see, you're obviously always slightly at a disadvantage in that one sense. You might be bigger or stronger or wiser, but you're never going to be seeing more than they are. It's quite nice for some people that they've got something that you haven't. You're dealing with a client group who don't come across many people who they have more than. I can sometimes take liberties with clients on the basis that they won't feel as confronted.
yes, Mr. Johnson.
Well, Your Honour, Mr. Thomas comes before the court after a 9-year gap in his offending history. It's fair to say that he's a very...
Well, now I do dream, and I dream in colour, and I dream in images, and images that I've never seen. So I can remember what my home looked like, what the garden looked like, my grandma's, what the sea's like, massive range of images, different cars, motorbikes, all sorts of things. In dreams, they get put together in a completely different way, and there'll often be an imagination of what something's like. So I will dream now, say, for example, about being in court, and although a lot of it will be sounds and voices and what have you, there will be a very definite visual representation within the dream. So there'll be my imagination of the room that I'm in. People They will just be a generic person there, rather than a particular person looking a particular way.
I've listened to everything that Mr. Johnson has so ably said on your behalf.
The sense of the person will come from their voice, or just the general sense of them. But they will often be in a completely imaginary environment based around where I think things would be in that particular room, in that particular dream. Right. Think about this. If you're a kid and you're having a story read to you, you know, and there's a description within that story of a castle or a troll or a bridge or what have you, in your mind's eye, that becomes very real, and you're imagining that bridge and that troll and that castle. And I guess, really, I just carry on imagining. You use sense of smell quite a lot. It lets me know if the building that I'm in is on fire. If you're walking along a street, you get used to the order that certain smells coming. There might be a coffee bar, Subway. They almost always pump out the smell of bread. Sometimes, ironically, you don't get smells where you would expect them. An ordinary shop that makes chocolates, you get a really lovely, strong, lush smell. If you walk past Hotel Chocolat, you almost get nothing, because everything is wrapped up in cellophane and there's no smell to come from the place. There are certain client groups who you get smelling a certain way, and they're sometimes quite sad smells, you know. You learn the smell of crack cocaine and the sort of soily smell that comes with it. There's a certain sweet but almost putrefying smell that will hang around some heroin addicts. The old drinkers just always smell not just stale, truly profoundly, almost decaying. It kind of becomes part of the job, you know. It fits. Whereas I think, you know, if you came to it fresh, you would just say, fucking hell, she stinks. No, you know, she's had a kid 6, 8, 9, 10 months ago. She's back on the gear, you know, she's struggling. And sometimes you'll realise that you've seen a client week in, week out, month in, month out, and you've got to know the change in their smell as their circumstances have changed. And then you think, oh my God, I've been doing this too long, or I need to get some more clients, you know?
His hearing's amazing. If he's sitting in a room by himself and you come in and you kind of think to yourself, I didn't even hear myself come in, like there's no noise that the floor's made or anything. He'll know you're in the room, like he always knows. We still go to the cinema. If something visual's happening on the screen, I'll be like, oh, the girl in the red coat's just come in, sort of thing. Like, I'll just say to him, because it makes it easier for him to understand what's going on. Films that have really great sound or like an amazing script, they're really good for Dad. But films that are either really visual or partially subtitled, that's an issue as well. When suddenly like there's loads of Spanish characters, and then I can obviously read the subtitle and all Dad can hear is Spanish.
Yo! James, how are ya? Hey, what have you been up to? Nice one. In Nottingham, our main square is the market square, and in the market square there's an immense fountain which sprays water in different shapes at different times. Then you know that you're at a particular point of the square, and the fountain's near to one of the tram tracks, so you'll hear big trams that rumble rather than make the sound that an ordinary bus would make. So you'll know that you need to orientate yourself between the two.
He can tell someone who's come into the room from their breath. If you do have bad breath, he can't stand it. Luckily, I always sort of mouthwash every morning anyway, although he recognises me from my breathing. I can come into a room, be 20 metres from him, and he'll straight away say, "Morning, Bod." And I'll say, at first I say, "How did you know that?" "Oh, you're breathing. It's different to somebody else's."
One oddity, and it really goes with the sense of hearing, is something called echolocation. You tap a stick, you'll get echoes. Echoes coming back from a wall will be quite sharp, hard. If there's a privet hedge, it'll be a much mushier sound that comes back. The weird thing is, when I was a kid, I kind of knew it happened and thought it was a bit weird and I must be a bit strange, so I never told anybody about it. I heard a teacher discussing it with another people at the blind school, and I sort of thought, well, shit me, I do that as well. This old machine, unfortunately, is still the best way of producing solid braille. So A is just one dot. B is those two. C. And there we have Isabel Body. What does it say about her? Isabel Body is ace. She is a top photographic bird. I tend almost subconsciously to count the number of steps between places, not only the number of paces around different buildings that I use a lot, but also like the number of steps in a particular staircase. When I was at secondary school, I used to go around a whole comprehensive school campus without even having a white stick. Fuck knows why I did that. I would never dream of it now.
There are pros to Dad being blind, such as if you get annoyed with him, you can pull a face at him and he won't know you're doing it. Like, that's a great one. It'll have been like Christmas or something, and I'm like whispering to my mum about what I'm going to get my dad, and Dad will be in the next room. And then Dad will have come in and just been like, if you want to get me a Christmas present, you can get me, or something like that. Like, it's just, it always surprises me.
Yeah.
Dad loves theme parks so much. He's such a daredevil. I think not having sight tends to really help you when you're looking at a roller coaster and in the queue for 3 hours thinking, wow, that is a big roller coaster. So I'm just like, yeah, let's go on this. And he's like, definitely.
Now, what tend to take?
He's a blind man who isn't blind. I was once moving house. I had a plumber there ready to put the washing machine and the fridge in. Digby came, he was just picking up the fridge. He took it into the house, he put it down, said to the guy, where do you want it? He put it where he said he wanted it. He got the washing machine, took that in. At the end of the day, Digby had gone, and I was just having a drink with the plumber. He said, oh, he's a marvel, that guy, isn't he? And I said, yeah, you know, given that he's blind. And the plumber said, blind? I said, yeah. He said, you're joking me. That's how Digby would want it. You name it, go-karting, do you fancy? Yeah, let's do go-karting. I'll drive, says Digby. So he had his own go-kart. We had an office car that had reached the end of its life, and before it could be scrapped, Digby said, I want to drive it. So off went the car with Digby to a local airport, permission to go on the airstrip, and off he drove that car at 70 miles an hour. I've been on a boat with him on the Norfolk Broads, and he's driven the boat.
I do love going to the gym. That's largely because by going to the gym, I can carry on eating and drinking excessively, both of which are things I enjoy very much. It's very different from the environment that we work here. So it's a chance to plug in the earphones and check what's happening with the news, or just read our books that are available through the Kindle, which will talk to you and talk to you at speed. I have been sort of offered medical interventions that might make a difference. And I can say on each occasion, made fuck all difference. Electrical implants are available for some people, and I wouldn't be wild to do it because I think it'd just be a massive distraction. There's always a danger that there are problems if you swim or use the gym or are in sort of more extreme environments. That's something else that would put me off it, really. There is always the possibility of gene therapy or of surgical intervention, using new tools. Mm-hmm. And I think if I was satisfied that it was something that was working for people, I would happily have a go at it. Mm. But I wouldn't fancy being a guinea pig because, what I have now works for me at a decent level. You always can face situations where, well, there's a 10% chance it'll all go horribly wrong, but a 90% chance that you'll be able to drive a Formula One racing car. I'd probably kind of do that.
Jeanette Winterson on Britain getting fatter. Free market. Kraft, PepsiCo, Nestle, Mondelez and the others claim that all food and drink is healthy in moderation. It's up to the consumer to make the right choices.
It'd be lovely to see my partner Emma and see what she looked like. It'd be lovely to see Ursula, because again, neither Ursula, my daughter, nor Alfie, my son, have I ever seen. Yeah. But that said, I love those people for what they are and who they are, and so it would just be another facet of it. And I can't believe it would make me love them any more or less. It would just really be sort of interesting. When I started to do the job, although I'd been doing it for maybe 3 or 4 years, I have to say that I was still regarded as something of a freak. Not just because I couldn't see, but because I'd not kind of been around the scene very long. And when I met your dad, he'd just come to Nottingham without really much of a base in this area at all. And so suddenly there was somebody who seemed to be a nice guy, an interesting person, keen to get into criminal law, keen to make their mark and get a good clientele. And so was following exactly the same path that I was following.
And we had a couple of pints, and we were chatting away, getting to know one another. And he suddenly said to me, "Do you fancy a game of darts?" And I thought, "You're having a laugh, aren't you? You're blind." So I said, yeah, what do you play? Thinking, just count up the scores when you throw them and see who got the most. No, he said 501.
Why I've set myself up for this now. Some things don't change. So the board's here.
Oh, yeah. I remember them. I can't even remember where the numbers are now.
I was thinking, well, I ought to put money on this. With most of the pub watching this blind man playing darts in fascination, he beat me hands down in the first game, so my pride was hurt. I said, let's make it best of 3. And he then promptly won the next 2 as well. So when he asked me if I wanted to make it best of 5, I said no, piss off. After a few drinks, I just said to him, how is it being blind? And he said, well, it's shit, isn't it? But you've got to make the most of it.
Oh, he's found the board now.
To be honest, when I'm with Digby, I forget that he's blind.
I think by trying to make myself as normal as possible, maybe I was also hiding a certain shyness about being blind, a certain determination to have people view me just as a person rather than as a blind person. And I think that there may have been a degree of dishonesty about that maybe I regret a bit. It's funny, when you're young and you're kind of making your way in the world, you want to show off. You want to show people that you can get from here to Timbuktu without asking for help. You want to show that you're just as capable of delivering letters, when you're working in the post room of a firm, just trying to get your foot in the door as the next person. There was a time when I would never have gone to a disabled toilet. I would always just go to the gents. But in fact, you can walk into a disabled toilet, swing your stick round, it'll tap the toilet, it'll tap the sink, and you've got all the fucking information you need. I think maybe a time comes, and maybe it should have come earlier for me, where you need to worry less about fitting in and more about actually what you're doing and how you're being with people.
7:50 p.m. Announce off. Alarm on.
Always love him, respect him, right? Forever. I mean, sincerely, Digby. It's my God.